What happens when the last thread of life is cut? Does our self dissolve into a fathomless void, or does it pass into another dimension beyond mortal comprehension? Welcome to a journey into uncharted spiritual territory as we explore one of the most profound and mysterious texts of Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo Thedol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Imagine a guide that leads you through the most intimate and mysterious moments of existence. This is the role that the Bardo Thedol fulfills, not just a guide to the end of the earthly journey, but a detailed map and spiritual compass indicating what happens after death. Get ready, for we are about to open these gates, decipher their messages, and perhaps come closer to understanding the meaning of existence. Bardo Thedol was created by Padmasambhava, a legendary and semi-mythical figure of Tibetan Buddhism who was born in India and brought Buddhism to Tibet in the 8th century. Tibetans revere him as Guru Rinpoche, which means precious teacher. Padmasambhava was not only a monk, but also a spiritual teacher, a yogi who was proficient in mystical techniques and esoteric knowledge. Bardo Thedol arose out of his desire to guide not only the living, but also the dead, offering them a path to liberation even after their last breath. It is not just a book, but a beacon of hope, lighting the way through the darkness of the unknown. From a young age, Padmasambhava demonstrated extraordinary mystical abilities and was recognized as a Mahasiddha who had attained the highest level of spiritual realization and developed supernatural powers known as siddhis. He was invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, who sought to strengthen Buddhism and unite the people by a common belief system. At the time, Tibet was a center of shamanic practices and spiritistic beliefs rooted in the Bon religion, an ancient Tibetan spiritual tradition. This diversity created difficulties for the spread of Buddhism. Upon arriving in Tibet, Padmasambhava encountered resistance from various cultural and spiritual forces. Local gods and spirits of the Bon tradition resisted Buddhism, and Padmasambhava used his knowledge of magic and tantric rituals to subdue them. The integration of Bon deities and practices into Tibetan Buddhism was crucial in establishing a solid spiritual foundation. Padmasambhava founded the first Buddhist monastery in Tibet, Samye, and began to transmit profound teachings about the mind, reality, and the cycle of existence known as samsara. In Tibetan Buddhism, death is not the end, but a transitional state, a moment of openness to spiritual liberation. Padmasambhava understood that at the moment of death, the mind enters a special state, more receptive to absolute truth, freed from the limitations of the physical body. He realized that this is a unique opportunity for liberation, but most people get lost in illusions and fears, missing it. His mission was to create a manual that could be read to the dying or studied while alive to prepare the mind for the bardo, the transitional states after death. He wanted to alleviate suffering and open the path to enlightenment, even when everything seems uncertain and disintegrating. This compassion is at the heart of the Bardo Thedol. He knew that many will not attain enlightenment in life, but saw death as the last chance. So he taught to recognize the clear light, the pure manifestation of mind, at the moment of death. Bardo Thedol leads us through the 3 basic states, or bardos, that every soul goes through. 1. Chikai Bardo, the moment of death. In Chikai Bardo, the soul experiences the very moment of death, when the physical body dissolves and the consciousness is freed from material fetters. After the dissolution is complete, the soul appears before the original clear light, described in the Bardo Thedol as dazzling, pure, and boundless. The clear light is the manifestation of the absolute nature of mind, a state of pure, unconditioned consciousness where there is no duality, fear, or attachment. It is referred to as the higher self, or the solar mind. There are many names for this state of perfection and infinite peace. For the spiritual practitioner, Chikai Bardo is the possibility of ultimate liberation. If the soul is able to recognize the clear light as part of its essence, it achieves instantaneous liberation, nirvana, and does not need to go through the other stages of the Bardo. This recognition does not depend on rituals or doctrines, but is a direct and complete experience of truth, where the mind sees itself without filters or distortions. In this moment, all conditioning, karma, and identities dissolve. However, for the unprepared, the intensity of the clear light can be terrifying. Instead of perceiving the light as its true nature, the mind may interpret it as a threat due to fear or attachment to the familiar. In this case, the soul retreats, losing the opportunity for liberation and moving on to the next stages of the Bardo, where it increasingly encounters distorted and limited visions according to its karmic inclinations. 2. Chonid Bardo, Bardo of Visions. As Carl Gustav Jung said, gods and demons are projections of the unconscious, powerful and inescapable, until they are understood as parts of themselves. In Chonid Bardo, the soul finds itself in a state of consciousness devoid of a physical body, and within a dimension where boundaries no longer exist. Here the soul experiences projections of its mind, which may manifest in angelic or frightening forms. This Bardo reveals the essence of the mind, where everything repressed, desired or feared manifests in intense form. The visions in the Chonid Bardo reflect the emotional and karmic states of the soul accumulated over a lifetime. They manifest in two forms, peaceful and angry visions. In the peaceful vision stage, the soul is greeted by visions of peaceful deities representing the enlightened and virtuous aspects of consciousness. These may be Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or deities of light, radiating the positive qualities that the soul has cultivated. Peaceful visions have a calm presence and give a sense of peace. But to the untrained mind, these visions can be overwhelming or incomprehensible, causing the soul to retreat and doubt their reality. During the stage of angry visions, if the soul fails to recognize the peaceful and fundamental nature of the original visions, it gradually encounters more intense visions known as angry deities. These figures are manifestations of anger, fear, and repressed desires, taking grotesque and disturbing forms. It is important to note that these wrathful deities are not external or malevolent entities, but are expressions of the mind itself, reflecting the emotions and attachments that still bind the soul to the cycle of suffering. The state of Chonid Bardo is described as a state in which the mind is freed from bodily limitations. It is a pure state of mental manifestations where everything is intensified. The visions that arise are like dreams, but with remarkable clarity and vividness. This is because the mind, freed from the body, experiences its inner energies in an unfiltered way. All that has been suppressed and stored up manifests with almost palpable power. These visions are considered opportunities for learning and enlightenment, as each one represents an aspect of the self that needs to be integrated or transcended. Those who maintain mindfulness during this Bardo can realize that all these visions, good and bad, peaceful and angry, are merely creations of the mind. Recognizing this truth allows the soul to dissolve fear and attain liberation. At this stage, the Bardo Thedol advises the soul to focus on the clear light, the original essence of the mind, which is described as a vast and pure radiance. Recognizing the clear light is the key to complete liberation, as it represents the innate nature of all beings. It is the sun amidst the clouds of visions, the light that remains unchanged despite all mental projections. If the soul can see through visions, it can attain enlightenment and transcend the cycle of rebirths. However, recognizing the clear light is not easy for the ordinary mind. For most beings, the visions are so real and filled with personal meaning that it becomes difficult to see beyond them. For this reason, the Bardo Thedol suggests that spiritual practitioners practice non-attachment to illusions and meditate on the nature of the mind. With this practice, even when faced with intense visions of Chonid Bardo, they will be able to keep their attention on the clear light and find peace. Fear and attachment are the biggest obstacles to liberation. Visions can cause deep fear, especially angry deities who represent unbridled aspects of the self. This fear creates a sense of separation, preventing the soul from recognizing the visions as part of the self. The soul may want to run away from these visions, or, because of attachment, focus on some of them, especially the worldly ones that keep it in the cycle of samsara. To overcome this cycle, the soul must realize that the visions are devoid of their own reality. In Tibetan Buddhism, this concept is known as shunyata, or emptiness. A mindful of emptiness, while chanting Bardo Chonid, can observe all the visions while remaining unattached, realizing them as temporary expressions of its own nature. Thus, the experience of Chonid Bardo is not a punishment or meaningless suffering, but a stage of revelation where the soul faces the mirror of its mind. It is the test that distinguishes those who are ready for liberation from those who still need to be reborn to deepen their learning. 3. Sidpa Bardo, rebirth. In Sidpa Bardo, the final phase of post-mortem experience, the soul faces a momentous choice, the determination of its next incarnation. This choice is conditioned by the cumulative energy of all actions, thoughts, and aspirations, which is collectively referred to as karma. In fact, the whole previous path leads to this decisive point, where the inner content of a person predetermines his further direction. Entering this bardo, the soul has already experienced dissolution in the Chikai Bardo and encountered its own projections and illusions in the Chonid Bardo. It now finds itself in a state of heightened mental intensity, where the desire for rebirth is intensified, fueled by fears and attachments that have not yet been overcome. It is this desire, according to the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, that drives the soul to seek a new body, a new form of existence. In Sidpa Bardo, the consciousness is influenced by karmic inclinations, which act like invisible signs left by the deeds of past lives. These signs function like magnetic forces, attracting the soul to conditions and experiences that reflect its inner state. For example, if a soul is burdened with intense fear, that fear can guide it to a new birth, where it will again be faced with similar emotions. Similarly, strong desires and unbridled emotions create an energy vortex that shapes the type of life the soul will experience in the next cycle. During Sidpa Bardo, the soul encounters a series of visions related to the rebirth process. These visions often include images of coitus, symbolizing the birth of new life. The soul is invited to choose a new body, a choice that is unconsciously guided by its emotional inclinations and karmic motivations. Numerous descriptions of the Bardo Thedol emphasize that the soul must maintain a state of non-attachment and clarity when seeing these images. Only then can it avoid blindly sinking into an unwanted new birth. For those who are able to maintain equanimity and unattachment, Sidpa Bardo provides the last opportunity for transcendence, a chance to avoid rebirth and choose the path of liberation. This is the goal of spiritual practice. Instead of being reborn under the influence of illusions and attachments, practitioners seek to realize that these visions are merely manifestations of their own minds, ephemeral and empty in nature. Throughout the Sidpa Bardo experience, the mind experiences a strong attraction to a new body, a process that, according to the Bardo Thedol, can be compared to a psychic storm. The urge for continued existence, for a new being, becomes all-consuming. The choice of a new body is not a rational act, but rather a deep instinctive impulse, where the characteristics of the new birth are shaped by the state of mind. It is as if the next body becomes a mirror image of what the soul needs to experience or resolve. This process of choice also reflects the Buddhist belief that each new birth represents an opportunity for spiritual growth. The body a soul chooses is closely linked to its karmic heritage and spiritual development. However, many fail to recognize this opportunity and end up being reborn in unfavorable circumstances where suffering is only perpetuated. Nevertheless, those who are able to see beyond this illusion can achieve a state in which, instead of being reborn, they merge with the clear light, the original essence of mind. According to the Bardo Thedol, preparation for this final stage begins while still alive. By reflecting on the nature of one's desires and fears, one gains a deeper understanding of the motives that shape one's destiny. Spiritual practices such as meditation and contemplation of death strengthen the capacity for non-attachment, helping the mind to remain unperturbed in the face of the drama unfolding in Sidpa Bardo. In this way, Sidpa Bardo reveals a simple but profound truth about the interconnectedness of life and death, that the cycle of rebirths is an ongoing expression of our choices and perceptions. By freeing oneself from attachments, one is liberated from the cycle of rebirths and achieves enlightenment, a state where there is no new birth as the illusion of fixed identity disappears. The Bardo Thedol is not just a religious text or a collection of esoteric beliefs. It is a tool of self-knowledge, a mirror of our mind, and a map of our destiny. It teaches that death is not only the end of life's journey, but also a gateway to new beginnings. As Ram Dass once said, "When you die, there is only one question that matters. How much did you love?" In this sense, the Tibetan Book of the Dead encourages us to reflect on our lives. Are we ready for the final journey? Are we ready to give up everything we think we are? Perhaps by reflecting on these teachings, we can not only prepare ourselves for death, but also learn how to truly live.